It was 6:12 p.m. on a Sunday when my husband's phone lit up with a Slack ping that should have stayed dead. I was watching him, sitting cross-legged on the floor with wires spread across the coffee table, patch cables, heat-shrink tubing, the guts of his test rig half open like a cadaver on a slab. He didn't flinch, didn't reach, just stared at the screen like it had insulted his mother. Then with a flick of the wrist he silenced it. No rage, no speech, just silence, and something behind his eyes that looked like betrayal. That's when I knew something had changed. Because Todd didn't ignore messages. Todd was the message. The guy who made sure shipments left Detroit at midnight and landed in Omaha by dawn. For 7 years, he'd been the skeleton key to a warehouse system no one else understood. He didn't brag, didn't bitch. He just built. And now? He was done giving them weekends for free. And believe me, that meant something was coming. A week before, some overcaffeinated COO in Yeezys gave a culture reset speech at the all-hands. Said things like, winners work weekends, and you either scale or you stale. I watched the replay with Todd that night. He sipped his beer, leaned back in the kitchen chair, and muttered, "This guy's a TED Talk away from replacing our coffee with Soylent." 3 days later, HR pulled him into a conference room. Some 30-something with a pre-written notepad and too much eyeshadow said, "We need to talk about your weekend availability." Todd asked if it was paid. She blinked. "It's not mandatory, but it shows commitment. You want to be seen as a leader, right?" His answer was short, clean, and the most Todd thing ever. "If leadership means unpaid labor, promote your damn conscience." That's when the air shifted. By the way, if you're even slightly enjoying this story, do us a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button and like the video. 97% of you never subscribe, but it really helps the team keep bringing you these insane, true stories. Appreciate it. Back to hell. The next few days were quiet, almost suspiciously so. Todd came home earlier than usual. The Slack messages slowed. His access to engineering environments subtly started breaking. Permissions lost here, credential refresh denied there. He told me it was probably an accidental policy update. I told him it sounded like corporate sabotage in khakis. Then came Tuesday. We had just brewed coffee. He kissed me goodbye like always, then texted me 12 minutes later. "Batch failed. They locked me out." I called. No answer. Just the spinning dial of disbelief. He came home by noon, face pale, jaw tight. HR didn't offer an explanation. No exit interview. Just a junior rep reading from a script, stammering through corporate non-answers. Due to recent performance misalignment with evolving leadership expectations. Blah blah blah. He asked them one question before he left. "Did you check what my credentials were tied to?" They hadn't. They didn't even understand the question. See, Todd wasn't just in the system, he was the system. He'd architected the warehouse pipeline from scratch. When to trigger robot retrievals, how to reroute palletizers during peak hours, even error correction protocols that kicked in when inventory mismatched by more than 0.2%. Every microservice authenticated through his secure token, not because he was a control freak, but because no one else ever asked to learn. And now, that token was dead. And no one, not that giggle-coached HR rep, not the buzzword-addled COO, had the faintest idea what they'd just unplugged. Todd didn't rage. He didn't storm out. He came home, made a sandwich, and opened his laptop. And I swear to God, the way he smiled while watching the system logs from home, it scared me more than if he'd thrown a chair through a window. Tuesday started like any other, right down to the burnt toast, and the way Todd reknotted his laces twice. He said tight shoes helped him think straight, like keeping the wiring snug inside his skull. He kissed me goodbye with that absent-minded focus he always wore. The one that meant he was already troubleshooting something in his head before the garage door even shut. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Just one word from him. Locked. I thought he meant a server. Maybe a Git push gone wrong. Then another text. Batch dead. No entry. I called. He didn't answer. Just sent a photo. His ID badge, taped over with a sticky note that said Escort TOHR, in all caps Sharpie like a damn hostage tag. When he finally called back, he sounded calmer than he should have. They deactivated everything. No Slack, no VPN, no email. That was fast. Did you meet with someone? Yeah. Intern in a blazer. She read a script about alignment with our evolving performance culture. I asked her who wrote it. She blinked like I'd asked her to name her kidneys. You okay? Yeah. Just watching the panic start to ripple. Because here's the thing. Todd didn't build things people could just turn off. He built threads through everything, microservices, batch jobs, even recovery failovers that lived under his name in the I am permissions tree. And those things? They didn't just know him. They needed him. The kid from HR hadn't even looked him in the eye. She handed over a thin envelope with a 3-week severance package and said, "It's not a termination, it's more of a redefinition of our mutual expectations." Todd grunted. So is that what you call gutting the core functions of your entire ops pipeline without knowing it? She didn't respond. Probably didn't understand. And that's what made it beautiful in the most awful way. They'd cut him loose without even asking what he had access to. Because in their eyes he was just another terminal node. Replaceable. Swappable. Dead weight. A guy with coffee breath who said too little at all hands meetings, and too much in code review comments. They didn't realize half their infrastructure had his fingerprints baked into the foundations like fossils in concrete. He walked out of that building without fanfare, no boxes, no scene. Just nodded to security, took one last look at the blinking badge scanner, and walked straight past it. That night, I caught him staring at the command logs on his laptop, a half-eaten sandwich going stale on his desk. He didn't type, didn't interfere, just watched, like a surgeon silently observing a body going into shock after the heart monitor flatlines. They think the bots will keep running, he said. Will they? He looked at me and grinned, small tight. For about 36 more hours. After that, the credentials roll. Then, they'll find out you don't just unplug a ghost from the machine without consequence. No threats. No revenge. Just physics. Cause and effect. Cut the wrong wire. The lights go out. Cut Todd? The system doesn't scream, it forgets how to breathe. By Thursday morning, the silence had teeth. I'd never seen Todd so still. He wasn't pacing, wasn't coding, wasn't even scrolling. Just sitting in the corner chair by the window with his laptop open, and one leg bouncing like a warning tremor. He hadn't shaved, barely touched his coffee, but his eyes were locked on that terminal like it owed him money. They're 2 hours into dead air, he finally said, not looking at me. What do you mean? Batch jobs. Inventory pre-checks. Robotics assignments for cross-dock lanes A through G. All silent. I blinked. And that's bad. He turned the screen toward me. Rows of red. Failed tasks. Timeouts. System retry attempts choking on themselves like a snake eating its own tail. It wasn't a fire yet. But it was the hiss right before the explosion. They don't know yet, he said. The day shift won't feel it. But night ops? They're about to think someone shoved a wrench into their back end. The crazy part? He hadn't touched a thing. No sabotage. No backdoor wipe. Just absence. His credential token. The one used by hundreds of automated routines across their entire logistics platform, had naturally expired 48 hours after his badge deactivation. No malice. No hacking. Just a time bomb with a friendly smile. One they'd built themselves by tying critical ops to a single engineer they never bothered to understand. I asked him, why didn't they rotate it? Don't they have backup accounts? He chuckled. Backups? You mean the intern they had shadow me for 3 weeks before they moved him to marketing? Or the director who told me documentation was a luxury the company couldn't afford during a hiring freeze? I didn't know what scared me more, the systems failing, or how calm he was watching it happen. He clicked through logs like a man watching old home videos. His naming conventions were pure Todd. Phoenix_navroutine_001, Venus_batch_Q4sync, failsafe_fo forgets basic math. Little inside jokes and breadcrumbs only he would understand. And now, each one was blinking red, screaming in silence, waiting for a key that no longer existed in their infrastructure. No one's noticed yet, he muttered. They'll think it's an API fluke. Maybe call it a server hiccup. And when that doesn't work, they'll hit refresh. Twice. Maybe reboot the warehouse's edge controller. But by 3 a.m., that whole facility's going to be full of forklifts standing still like it's a damn robot funeral. He wasn't smiling, not gloating, just watching, measuring the fallout with the precision of a man who once spent 3 months reworking the automation logic to reduce Pickerbot traffic congestion during Black Friday overflow. He knew this system better than he knew some of his family. Hell, he trusted it more. I leaned on the doorframe and said, "So, what happens next?" He didn't look up, just pointed at a countdown timer blinking in the top right corner of the screen. When that hits 0, the overnight reconciliation triggers. And without my auth token, it'll hang, then crash, then dump every single mismatch SKU into a pending state with no routing logic. Translation. He finally looked up. Translation. Pallets will stack up. Forklifts won't know where to go. Labels won't print. Shipments stall. And nobody, not IT, not ops, not the golden boy COO, will have a damn clue why. And he'd done nothing. Not one key pressed to interfere. Just logged into his own archive, watched the lights flicker in systems that used to obey his credentials like scripture, and waited. Not for revenge. Not for chaos. Just to prove a simple, brutal truth. They didn't fire an employee. They deleted the core variable from their equation, and forgot to check if the math still worked. Thursday hit like a fork in a toaster. By 10:03 a.m., ops was already buckling. Todd was upstairs in his hoodie, barefoot, calmly sipping coffee while the warehouse floor 17 miles away was sinking like a brick in a septic tank. The first shot came from a senior manager, someone Todd used to call PowerPoint Pete. A guy who never met a crisis he couldn't forward to 6 people and call leadership. His email, timestamped 9:42, subject line in full caps, urgent. Batch scripts failing across zones B3 body? 1 sentence. This is impacting fulfillment. Need root cause ASAP. CC'd to the new COO, of course. Because what better way to dodge responsibility than to loop in the guy who caused it? 10 minutes later, IT chimed in, voice cracking through a Zoom call no one wanted to be on. We traced the failures to credential expiration. The service auth tokens were tied to a now deactivated identity. The COO, who probably thinks Kubernetes is a gym supplement, barked, "Then regenerate it. We've got a credential manager, don't we?" A pause. A too long pause. Then someone from DevSEC Ops. A guy Todd once described as sharp enough to build a rocket, dumb enough to launch it indoors, said, "Sir, the issue isn't the token. The system architecture is proprietary, legacy built, and a lot of the override routines were coded manually." The COO didn't like that. "So you're telling me we're crippled because some guy forgot to write documentation?" Another pause. Then a whisper of truth from a junior engineer barely above a mutter. He did write it. But he was the only one who could read it. Back home, Todd had the whole thing playing on mute. Screen-shared chaos from a leaked internal Slack thread forwarded by a former colleague who knew better than to speak his name aloud. He read through the log snippets, sipping from a chipped mug like it was a murder mystery novel he'd already solved. Then his phone buzzed. Linkage. A recruiter from Fultra Tech, their crosstown competitor. Someone with a startup headshot and a message that read like a pickup line at a funeral. "Hey Todd, saw you're no longer with Shipwell. We're scaling fast. Need someone who can build stability at speed. You open to a convo?" He stared at it. Didn't respond. Just smiled, like a man reading his own eulogy and correcting the grammar. Back on the Shipwell side, the COO was spiraling. Calls were being made. Blame tossed like grenades with the pins still in. Engineers were yanked off feature work and shoved into credential war rooms. One poor guy tried manually reassigning the service tokens to a dummy admin role. Took the whole bot cluster offline for 22 minutes. Labels stopped printing. Pick and pack queues froze mid-operation. A floor supervisor reportedly yelled, "We're blind and dumb and the robots are drunk." Todd never touched a line of their code. Didn't need to. They'd amputated their own infrastructure. He just watched the phantom limb twitch. I asked him why he didn't reply to the recruiter. He said, "Because right now they're still looking at logs and blaming syntax. Once they realize the architecture is the guy they fired, then we'll talk." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a bug. This was a resurrection in progress. One they'd triggered themselves by mistaking silence for insignificance. By Friday morning, the polite cracks in the system had turned into full-on structural collapse. At 6:17 a.m., the first emergency dispatch hit ops. Lane 3 was jammed. Not a little hiccup, jammed. Forklift bots were frozen mid-rotation. Arms extended like metal corpses stuck in rigor mortis. One had knocked over an entire pallet of cold storage pharmaceuticals because the label it printed told it to route to a dock that didn't exist anymore. They rerouted manually. Tried rebooting individual units. Then tried the floor controller. It stalled unresponsive. The automated recovery sequence should have kicked in. It didn't. Why? Because the auth token for emergency logic fallback was Todd's. And Todd wasn't there. In the next 30 minutes, the situation compounded. Labeling printers across 3 fulfillment zones began misprinting in bulk, skipped digits, mirrored barcodes, some just spitting out blank strips. The system tried compensating by auto-generating tracking numbers. It made them in duplicate. The same tracking ID appeared on 243 different packages. When FedEx scanned them, all hell broke loose. Finance sent their first warning at 8:03 a.m. A mid-level analyst flagged a cascading delay affecting 8 of their top 12 clients. Estimated revenue impact, $386,000 and climbing by the hour. Inventory sitting idle. Dead weight. The COO finally snapped. He marched into the engineering bullpen, Todd used to call it the open concept blame pit, and started pointing fingers like a toddler at a Lego pile. Who owns the robotics handler queue? Who's in charge of label sync jobs? Why are we still blaming a deactivated account? A software lead tried to explain. Sir, the credential wasn't just for login. It was tied to a series of logic gates, scripts, and fallback routines. The system doesn't just run through that ID. It recognizes it. The COO slammed a laptop shut. Then change it. Rip it out. Rebuild it. Someone else muttered. That'll take 3 weeks. If we don't break everything worse first. More engineers were pulled from customer-facing projects. Feature rollouts halted. Bug queues ignored. One senior dev tried to spin up a containerized override patch, only to crash the fulfillment dashboard across all locations. By noon, they were flying blind. Not even a spreadsheet to comfort them. Meanwhile, Todd sat at the kitchen table eating cereal, like he was watching early morning cartoons. He had 3 tabs open, system logs, LinkedIn, and a private email thread with the Fultratech recruiter. Still hadn't replied. I slid him his second cup of coffee and asked, "You going to answer her?" He smirked, never looking up. Let them stew one more day. She'll double the offer by Monday. I peeked at the logs. Orders stalled. Resends stacking up. 3PL vendors flagging compliance issues. One client, a massive e-commerce retailer with 2-day delivery guarantees, had filed a formal SLA violation. Liquidated damages clause? 6 figures. Minimum. This still feel good? I asked. No, he said. It feels earned. That afternoon, an old friend from legal forwarded him a screenshot of an internal Slack thread. The COO had typed, "This wouldn't be happening if someone had documented things properly." Below it, someone replied with one line, "He did. You just never read it." That was the moment the mood changed. Not for them. For Todd. Because that's when he realized the system wasn't just breaking. It was remembering who built it. By late Friday, they'd stopped blaming code and started blaming ghosts. The COO's tantrums weren't working, and legal was already sniffing around the numbers. 6 SLA violations, $712,000 in delayed order fines, and a brewing contractual breach with a Tier 1 pharmaceutical distributor. The system wasn't just broken. It was buckling under the weight of its own missing architect. That's when the CTO stepped in. He'd been silent most of the week, kept his distance from the COO's grindset theater, but now? He walked into the ops war room and said one line that froze everyone mid-keystroke. "Get me whoever had those credentials." Now. The room paused like someone had hit mute. A junior systems analyst looked up from 3 hours of failing test environments and said what none of them wanted to admit. "Sir, we don't have the override architecture." The CTO blinked. What do you mean? We mean, and this time it came from someone in DevOps, the same guy who tried to reroute failover logic earlier and took down a third of the bot network. We mean he built it manually. Custom. There's no shared diagram. No backup map. He was the redundancy. The COO scoffed from the corner, still drinking some bullshit soy protein latte like caffeine could fix a data bleed. He's gone. We'll patch it. The CTO didn't even look at him. Just said, patch what exactly? Meanwhile, Todd was sitting on the back deck in jeans and an old hoodie that said 1999 Robotics State Champs. He'd pulled out the pressure washer and was halfway through blasting mildew off the patio bricks when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He didn't answer. 30 seconds later, voicemail. He played it on speaker while wiping his hands on a towel. It was Rick from IT. The guy who once took Todd out for wings after a 16-hour emergency patch marathon during peak season. Voice tentative, rushed. Hey man. It's Rick. Look, I know things ended messy, but we're in a bit of a bind. I was wondering if you could maybe hop on a quick Zoom? Like 5 minutes. Just to help us clarify a few logic dependencies. I owe you a beer, seriously. Todd didn't reply. Didn't even save the voicemail. He just clicked forward and dropped it into an email thread labeled Fultratech, Architecture Proposal. Subject line. Example of dependency depth Shipwell ops failure. Attached. Screenshots of redline batch failures, a time-stamped image of frozen bot activity, and a rough flowchart Todd sketched from memory, showing how 47 backend processes were built around his credential layer, each with unique logic handlers, all now dangling like nerves without a brain. He hit send, then poured himself a bourbon. Neat. I walked out and leaned on the railing. That Rick guy sounded sincere. Todd exhaled. He is. But sincerity's not a rollback strategy. We sat there a minute, listening to the low hum of a neighbor's mower. Then he said, almost to himself, I didn't leave them broken. I left them undocumented. Because they never asked how it worked. Only that it did. And that, I think, was the difference. They thought firing him deleted the variable. But they forgot who wrote the equation. By Friday night, it wasn't just a breakdown. It was a funeral procession with forklifts for pallbearers. The CEO, who hadn't stepped foot inside a warehouse since the ribbon cutting 5 years ago, drove in from his glass tower in Scottsdale and showed up in a tailored windbreaker like he thought he could smooth-talk physics. What he saw stopped him cold. Pallets stacked 5 high with no barcodes. Sorting arms twitching in place, caught mid-command. Label printers blinking like slot machines, spitting out error flags instead of tracking numbers. Every third-floor manager looked like they'd cried behind a pallet rack. The bots. Dead still. $32 million worth of machinery reduced to cold statues under fluorescent lights. The head of operations, a guy Todd once described as a walking nervous breakdown stapled into khakis, walked up, headset off, face gray. We're hemorrhaging 7 figures, hourly. The CEO didn't speak. Just looked around like maybe if he stared hard enough, the pallets would magically start moving again. They didn't. Someone shoved a tablet into his hands. Live metrics from Fulfillment Central. Everything was red. Order velocity stalled. SLA compliance breached. Real-time sync 0%. Inventory location accuracy sub 30%. The kind of numbers that made investors call lawyers before breakfast. Legal had already started triage. Someone from compliance flagged the use of deprecated fallback routines. Ones that were supposed to be updated 9 months ago but hadn't been touched because, as the note said, Todd has it handled. And now Todd was gone. Not fired. Not replaced. Gone. The CTO stood near Dock 4, arms folded, watching the COO try to spin the narrative to the CEO like this was a minor systems hiccup. We're patching things now. This isn't foundational. It's just a credential hole. IT's already running recovery options. The CTO finally spoke low and sharp. You fired the wrong person. The COO scoffed. We're past blame, Neil. No, the CTO said. You're past understanding. That's not a patchable credential hole. That's a legacy architecture tied to one architect. And he walked out with the blueprint in his head. I don't care what he built. We can reverse engineer it. Reverse engineer what exactly? We don't even know where his handlers start and end. The override scripts are buried across 6 microservices. Nobody even knew what he'd automated. The CEO turned to legal. Could we sue him? Legal shook her head. He didn't sabotage anything. The logs show clean cutoff. No malice. No deletion. The systems failed because they were built around him. You can't sue someone for not handing you the parachute you forgot to ask for. In the silence that followed, the head of ops muttered, God help us if the backup server misses the 4 a.m. reconciliation run. Everyone looked at each other. Nobody moved. And 17 miles away, Todd was curled up on the couch with our dog asleep on his chest, sipping ginger tea, scrolling through a Fultratech proposal draft titled, Pipeline V2, Non-Person Dependent Architecture. No rage. No revenge. Just a simple truth, ringing in the air like a server room gone dark. They didn't lose control. They just realized who had it the whole time. Monday morning, Todd shaved. That's how I knew something was about to shift. He put on a clean button-down, not the wrinkled ones he used to grab from the laundry basket at 7:41 a.m., but a fresh, pressed, deliberate shirt. I watched him in the hallway mirror, adjusting the collar like a man preparing for his own resurrection. At 9 a.m. sharp, he walked into Fultratech's new glass-walled hub across town. No onboarding slideshow. No we're a family speech. Just a whiteboard, 3 engineers who looked like they hadn't slept, and a single directive from the CTO. We don't want what they had. Build something no one person can break or be broken by. He nodded and started sketching. I saw the smile before he even spoke that night. One of those quiet, satisfied smirks he only ever used when he solved something no one else could even see. They gave me full architecture control. No silos. No ego. Just clean slate. Do they know what you're capable of? He paused. No. But they're listening. That's the difference. Meanwhile, across town, the Shipwell offices were still burning in silent collapse. 3 more major clients had defected over the weekend. The SLA damages hit $1.2 million by Sunday night. The COO had gone mysteriously offline, and ops was now being run by a skeleton crew using duct-taped workarounds they didn't trust. And then the final call came in. Private number. Todd let it ring once, twice, then put it on speaker. Hello. It was the CEO. Not the COO. Not legal. The CEO. His voice was different. No command. No squagget. Just exhaustion layered under urgency. Todd. I know we handled things poorly. That was never my call. If I'd known what you had access to, what you were holding together. Todd didn't interrupt. Just waited. The CEO sighed. Look, we don't need everything. Just guidance. Anything you can give us. Paid, of course. We'll bring you on as a consultant. Or license the old scripts. Whatever you want. Todd looked out the window at the Fultratech logo glowing on the building next door. He sipped his coffee, then said calm and quiet. Svi, that pipeline? You killed it when you killed my badge. A long pause. Static on the line. Then he hung up. No angit. No victory speech. Just facts, delivered with surgical clarity. Because it wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about consequence. They'd removed him like a worn-out part, never realizing he was the ignition sequence. And now they were stuck on the side of the road, calling the mechanic they ghosted. Todd closed his laptop, stood up, and walked back into the design room. Whiteboard waiting. Engineers ready. A blank canvas to build the system they should have asked him to build years ago. No ego. No resentment. Just legacy reborn. The new Fultratech Fulfillment Center opened on a Thursday. It was sleek, cool as a scalpel. White floors that looked like glass, the quiet hum of synchronized bots moving with eerie precision, and screens on every wall tracking live metrics down to the millisecond. No blinking red. No system alerts. Just motion. Purpose. Calm. Todd walked the floor with a lanyard in hand, his new badge still fresh from print. He didn't rush. Didn't strut. Just moved with the kind of unshakable stillness I'd only seen in him once before. The day he rebuilt the entire batch logic engine in 48 hours after a firmware update bricked half the robots in his old warehouse. He tapped the badge at a side terminal. Access granted. On the monitor, a dashboard labeled Rev 2, non-credential dependent. Clean code. Distributed ownership. No single point of failure. Everything running smoothly without being tethered to any one person, including him. A junior engineer, wide-eyed, maybe 24 at most, sidled up with a coffee and a nervous smile. Hey, if you don't mind me asking, what happened at your last company? Everyone talks about it like something exploded. Todd chuckled. Not bitter. Not smug. Just tired in that way people get when they've lived through the thing the room only whispers about. They ran on loyalty, he said. Unpaid. The kid blinked. Didn't get it, not really. But nodded anyway and walked off, probably to Google it later. Todd stayed there a moment longer, watching a picker bot slide into place, grab a sealed package, rotate, and glide down its track like it had choreography instead of code. No crashes. No frozen lanes. No slapdash patches balancing a brittle legacy. It wasn't just better. It was free. I met him by the exit an hour later. He didn't say much. Just took my hand and walked me past the polished glass doors while the sun dropped over the loading docks, casting long shadows across the perfectly humming machines. In the quiet, I asked, "You ever think they'll figure out what really happened?" He shook his head. Doesn't matter. Their system didn't crash when I left. He paused, eyes still on the horizon. It just stopped pretending it could run without me.